evidence and provisional remedies. Evidence, provisional remedies, special civil actions, and spectro. Yata. So we'll start with evidence. Now, we will be, of course, this review will be selective, with respect to points in evidence that need to be given emphasis on. Number one is the concept of evidence. Do not forget the concept of evidence. It is the means sanctioned by the rules of ascertaining in a judicial proceeding the truth respecting a matter of fact. Okay, so it is the means, it is the tool by which you are able to establish the point of controversy. It is the means, it is the tool, of ascertaining in a judicial proceeding. That is why the rules on evidence are strictly applied in judicial proceedings. It may be made to apply, the rules on evidence may be made to apply in other proceedings other than judicial, but only in a suppletory character. So these rules on evidence are applied in all courts, so judicial proceedings. Next point. The rules on evidence shall be the same in all courts, meaning whether it is the courts of the first level or the courts of the second level, even the Court of Appeals, the Sandigan Bayan, the Supreme Court. Except as otherwise provided by law or by the rules. For example, ano yung exception? Because the same daw in all courts, particularly in the trial courts. The MTCs, trial courts, first level MTCs, second level RTCs. So the rules and evidence are the same in all courts. Kasi judicial proceedings now, except when otherwise provided by law or by rules. For example, under the rules, iba ang quantum of proof in civil cases. Iba ang quantum of proof, weight of evidence. Iba ang quantum of proof in criminal cases. You know this. It's likewise different quantum of proof or weight of evidence in admin cases. Civil cases, preponderance of evidence. Criminal cases, proof beyond reasonable doubt. Administrative cases, substantial evidence. Now this. So, even if the rules are the same, nevertheless, one rule, which is the rule on quantum of proof, may vary depending on the rule. As the rule says, this is an exception. Also, with respect to compromise, in criminal cases, an offer of compromise is an implied admission of guilt. In civil cases, it is not. As in fact, an offer of compromise is not admissible against the one who made the offer in civil cases. As in fact, we know that compromise is encouraged as far as civil cases are concerned. Now, another important point to remember as far as evidence is concerned, please, very important to, lumalabas ito. Evidence signifies the relation between two facts. The factum probandum and the factum probans. Lumalabas yan. Evidence signifies the relation between two facts. The factum probandum and the factum probans. Basta tandaan ninyo, relation. So may connection. So what is the factum probandum? The factum probandum is the proposition that is sought to be established in a particular case. It is your theory of the case. What you seek to establish in a particular case. That is the factum probandum. What is the factum probans? Factum probans refers to the materials evidencing the factum probandum. That is why we say evidence signifies the relation between two facts. The factum probandum and the factum probans, meaning that it is by virtue or through the factum probans na materials that you are able to establish the factum probandum. The proposition that you seek to establish through the factum probans. Another point to remember, always, even when you become lawyers, two requisites for purposes of admissibility of evidence. Please, any kind of evidence, testimonial, object, documentary, For this kind of evidence to be admissible, any kind of evidence to be admissible, it must be both relevant and competent. It cannot be relevant or competent. These two requisites must concur for purposes of admissibility of any piece of evidence. Tandaan nyo, it must be both relevant and competent. When is evidence relevant? It has a relation to the fact in issue. What is the fact in issue? That is the subject matter of the inquiry. So the evidence to be relevant must have a relation to the subject matter of the inquiry. When is evidence competent? Evidence is competent if it is not excluded by the rules. It is not excluded by the rules. Now, I am stressing this kasi kailangan for you to remember. For admissibility, again, you have to have, the evidence must be both relevant and competent. I think for those who are under me in evidence, I stress this, no? In your yung fourth year kayo, fourth year ko kayo nahawakan di ba? Not in the regular evidence. No. Remember the example I gave on hearsay? Let's say it's a prosecution for defamation. It's a prosecution. It's a classic illustration, and both must be present, both elements, relevance and competence. In a prosecution for defamation, if the witness says, according to X, Y is a gambler, a prosecution for defamation, that is the subject matter of the inquiry, whether or not X said that. My testimony is relevant. It is relevant because it has relation to the subject matter of defamation. But is my testimony as a witness on the witness stand saying that according to X, Y is a gambler, is my testimony admissible? No, because it might be relevant, but it is hearsay. And therefore it is incompetent. So it is only relevant, but it is not competent because it is hearsay. Because a witness, you know very well, must testify only on matters of his own personal knowledge. If the witness testifies on a matter that has simply been relayed to him by a third person, that is hearsay. So even if a particular testimony is relevant because it has a relation to the fact in issue or the subject matter of the inquiry, tandaan nyo, for as long as that piece of evidence is excluded by the rules, that is not admissible. So two requisites must concur. If I have to be repetitive, two requisites must concur for purposes of admissibility. It must be both relevant and competent. Tandaan yan, it's very important. Now, judicial notice. What should you remember as far as judicial notice is concerned? Alam naman ninyo yung mandatory from discretionary. Mandatory, the court shall, kasi mandatory. Yung official acts of the executive, legislative, that's a matter of memorization, no? And for you to apply. Now, I'm after about discretionary. Discretionary, in a recent decision, which is the 2009 decision, the Supreme Court said, for purposes of discretionary judicial notice, tandaan niyo, discretionary is the court, if the court desires to take judicial notice of a particular fact, the court would first have to announce it to the parties. So the court intends, kasi hindi naman motu proprio yan because it is discretionary. So it is not motu proprio, or it should be either on motion of the party for the court to take judicial notice of a particular fact. By the way, before I go any further, remember the concept of judicial notice. It is cognizance by the court of matters without need of introducing proof. Cognizance by the court of matters without need of introducing proof. What do we mean by this? when we say the court takes judicial notice of this particular fact, that's it. You don't need to present evidence. For example, the court takes judicial notice of the fact that last weekend we had a store by the name of Basyang. Basyang ba? Lola Basyang. Okay. By the name of Basyang. The court takes judicial notice. Now, if the court announces it, that it takes judicial notice of this particular fact, wala na. You don't need to present proof of this fact because ini-recognize na ng court. Now, please, one more thing. Since if judicial notice is cognizance by the court of matters without need of introducing proof, remember that judicial notice is not evidence. It is not evidence. Because once the court takes judicial notice of a particular fact, you don't need to present evidence. So it is not evidence. Even if the judicial notice is termed as judicial cognizance without need of introducing proof, that does not make judicial notice evidence. Judicial notice is not evidence. It takes the place of evidence. It takes the place of evidence. Why do we say that it takes the place of evidence? Because as I said, once the court takes judicial notice of a particular matter, of a particular fact, that's it. You don't need to introduce evidence. Okay, yun ang importante for you is a concept as far as judicial notice is concerned. Next point. We go back to discretionary judicial notice. Pag discretionary, so the court may or may not take judicial notice. Pag mandatory kasi, the court shall and ought to kasi mandatory. Okay, now, yung subject matter of mandatory judicial notice, please memorize, Please memorize. Kasi remember the case of yung ZTE, hindi naman sub judice, naka-file na, but that's a different criminal liability. Yung where it was resolved, you remember it was the contract was terminated, yung the agreement between the two presidents, si GMA at saka yung Chinese president, because of all the noise that was being created, objection to the ZTE broadband deal. Remember the three petitions, one filed by Joy de Venecia, yung Amsterdam Holdings, tapos kay Rolex Suplico, and then there are three petitions that were filed, seeking, petitioning the court for the cancellation of that agreement. For the cancellation of that agreement. Okay, so because of all the noise, the two presidents of the Philippines, GMA at saka yung Chinese president, they agreed to just cancel the contract. It did not push through. So during the pendency of the petitions, the Solicitor General filed a manifestation. A manifestation that the two presidents have agreed to terminate the agreement, to cancel the agreement. And therefore, the issue has already been rendered moot and academic. There ought to be a dismissal already of the three petitions that have been filed. Kasi ginamit ang judicial notice dito. How was it resolved? Okay, they objected. The petitioners objected. How do we know? How do we know that there is no proof? There is no proof that there was in fact a cancellation of the agreement. We cannot rely on the word of the president because she is known to be flip-flopping. She says one thing at one time, she does another thing at another time. Oy, kinote ko yan, Hindi ko nisasabi yan. Kinote ko yan, sabi ng petitioners, doon sa opposition nila to the manifestation and request for dismissal filed by the Office of the Solicitor General. So we need, sabi nila, it should be attached, the minutes of the alleged agreement where the two presidents agreed to terminate the ZTE broadband deal. So they wanted the presentation because the Solgen did not attach to the manifestation that agreed the minutes, akisman lang daw the minutes. So it is in black and white that our president actually agreed to terminate the ZTE broadband deal. Oh, what did the Supreme Court say? Speaking through Justice Ruben Reyes, ang ponente niya, Justice Ruben Reyes. The court has already taken cognizance. The court has already taken judicial notice. Remember, that is an official act of the executive. So you do not take, the court shall and cannot do otherwise but to take judicial notice of that. You don't need to present any other document once the court has taken judicial notice of this particular fact. And the court The court considers the fact that it is an official act of the chief executive, and therefore the court shall take judicial notice of that. So, kailangan, at least baunin niyo sa bag yung matters that the court shall take judicial notice of. Kasi nagamit recently. Next. Malay niyo, gamitin ulit. Okay, next. Yung discretionary judicial notice, what are these matters of discretionary judicial notice where the court may take judicial notice of? Matters of public knowledge, matters of a questionable demonstration, matters which ought to be known to the judges by reason of their judicial functions. Okay, not matters simply personally known to the judges. Personally known in the course of the exercise of their judicial functions. Hindi yung chismis-chismis lang. Nalaman nila, nabasa nila sa books in the exercise of their judicial functions. Okay, now, itong matters of public knowledge. There is a recent case on this. It's a 2009 case. Matters of public knowledge. For the court to take judicial notice of, the very important element is notoriety. Discretion ng Supreme Court, For purposes of discretionary judicial notice of matters of public knowledge, the important element is notoriety. Notoriety. Meaning, number one, ang requisites niyan. Ang requisites for notoriety, the matter must be of common and general knowledge. The matter must be of common and general knowledge. Number two, it must be well and authoritatively settled. Not doubtful or uncertain. Take note of this, It must be well and authoritatively settled. Not doubtful or uncertain. And number three, it must be known to be within the limits of the court's jurisdiction. It must be known to be within. Hindi yung basta, that's common practice. It must be, for the court to take judicial notice of it, it must be notorious, existing as a fact. So it must be of common and general knowledge. It must be well and authoritatively settled, not uncertain or doubtful. And number three, it must be known to be within the limits of the court's jurisdiction. I'll cite you the case, Spouses Latif versus Rosalie Chua. It is October 16, 2009. Spouses Latif versus Rosalie Chua, October 16, 2009. So very important, nag-stress dyan. You don't simply say it's a matter of common knowledge, so the court may take judicial notice. No. According to the Supreme Court, there is the important element of notoriety for purposes of judicial notice. Next, remember that the court cannot take judicial notice of the contents of the records of other cases, even if those cases are pending before the same courts. The same court. One court cannot take judicial notice of the contents of the records of other cases, even if those cases are pending before the same court. The exception is if the court takes judicial notice with the knowledge and consent of the parties involved. Yun lang ang exception. In other words, motu proprio, the court cannot take judicial notice as a rule of the contents of the records of other cases. In other words, kung ano man ginawa niya doon, even if similar facts, he cannot just simply adopt it in another case. He cannot take judicial notice of the contents of the records of other cases, even if those cases are pending before the same court, except if it is done with consent, with the knowledge and consent of the parties involved. Next, judicial admission. Okay, importante ito Judicial admission, an admission oral or written, verbal or written, made in the course of the proceedings in the same case, does not require proof. Di ba? That's the rule. An admission or verbal or written made in the course of the proceedings in the same case does not require proof. Very clear naman yan. If there is one judicial proceeding, the party makes an admission in a judicial proceeding. In that particular judicial proceeding, you don't need to prove it. Because it's already part. It is already part of the expediente of the case. It is made in one judicial proceeding, in the course. It's oral. When is an oral admission made? In the course of the testimony of a witness. Or in a criminal case, let's say in the course of the arraignment, when the accused makes admissions. In the course of the pre-trial conference, stipulation of facts. Does the defendant admit on such and such a date, the plaintiff and defendant entered into contract, admitted. That is a judicial admission because it is made in the course of the judicial proceedings. Okay, when is an admission written admission judicial? If the admission is contained in a pleading, if the admission is contained in a pleading that is filed in court, that is a judicial admission. And the rule is, if it is a judicial admission, it does not require proof because it is judicial in nature. And it conclusively binds the person making the admission. Now, one admission is made in the course of the proceedings in one case. That is a judicial admission. Now, if that is a judicial admission, now, in another case, that judicial admission now is introduced in evidence in another judicial proceeding, that now would have to be proved. Why? Because with respect to the second judicial proceeding, that is already an extrajudicial admission. So, if it is made in the course of the proceedings in one case, dun sa case na yon, judicial admission yan. Which does not require proof. But even if it is already a judicial admission, if it is offered and introduced in evidence in another judicial proceeding, it loses its character of being judicial. It assumes the character of an extrajudicial admission with respect to the second case, where it is being introduced. And if it is an extrajudicial admission, tandaan nyo, it has to be proved. What about an admission contained in a pleading that has been amended? An admission contained in a pleading that has been amended. Alam na naman nyo, an amended pleading supersedes the pleading that it has amended. So yung original pleading, once it is amended, wala na yan. But the original pleading is the one that contains an admission. It was judicial in at the first instance because the admission was contained in a pleading that was filed in court. But the problem is subsequently that pleading was amended. And the rule is the amended pleading supersedes the pleading that it amends. So what happens? Di na supersede na, wala na yan yung original pleading. Question, can the admission still be used in evidence against the pleader? Can it still be used in evidence against the pleader? Yes, but you have to prove it already. Why? Kasi na-supersede na nga eh. So it becomes an extrajudicial admission. And therefore, if it is an extrajudicial admission, you have to prove it. Gets nyo? Am I trying too fast? Mahaba kasi yung coverage eh. Gets nga?
Yes.
Okay naman guys, evidence, di ba? Selective na lang tayo. Now, what about an implied admission? Yung sa modes of discovery, yung request for admission, di ba? If you're served with a request for admission and you do not make an answer, or a response or a reply to the request for admission, all those which are requested to be admitted are deemed admitted. So implied admission yan. Is that a judicial admission? Yes. Settled na yan in one case. It's a 2006 case. No? Implied admission in modes of discovery are also considered as judicial admissions. Implied tingnan nyo, judicial pa rin yan. Because it is deemed admitted because you did not react or reply to the request for admission. That is a case of Programs Incorporated versus Province of Bataan. It's June 26, 2006. Province of Programs Incorporated versus Province of Bataan. June 26, 2006. Now, we talk about judicial admission, it need not be proved. However, if it is extrajudicial admission, you have to prove it. I cited instances when there can be, but generally, it's for as long as the admission is made out of court. That is an extrajudicial admission which has to be proved. Okay, now, please remember, with respect to extrajudicial admissions, you apply the res inter alios acta rule. Please, lumalabas yan sa bar. Remember, res inter alios acta rule. Di ba 2 parts yan? Res inter alios acta, 2 parts yung rule na yan. Number 1, the rights of a party cannot be prejudiced by the act, declaration, or omission of another. That is the rule. First part. Second part of res inter alios acta rule. The fact that one did or did not do one thing at one time is not admissible to prove that he did or did not do the same thing at another time. The same or similar thing. Previous acts as evidence. So, 2 parts ang res inter alios acta rule. Pero ito, commonly, it is the first part. The rights of a party cannot be prejudiced by the act, declaration, or omission of another. That is the rule. In other words, whatever I say, whatever I do, binds me alone. It will not bind you. Your rights will not be prejudiced by what I say, by what I do. Yung sinabi ko, yung ginawa ko, sa akin lang magbabind. It will not bind you. That is res inter alios acta. Now, that is the rule. What are the exceptions? Tignan ninyo sa exceptions, meron dyan common denominator. For example, yung admission by a co-partner, admission by an agent, co-partner or agent, admission by co-conspirator, admission by privacy. Tingnan ninyo, anong common denominator dyan? In other words, ito ang exceptions. Remember, these are the exceptions to the res inter alios acta rule. What do we mean exceptions? Because the rule is, what I say, what I do will bind me only, it will not bind you. But under the exceptions, what I say, what I do may bind you. Gets nyo? Yun ang exception. Kaya siya exception eh. What I say, what I do, generally should not bind you. But under the exceptions, what I say, what I do, may bind you. Under what circumstances? Can my act, can my declaration, bind you? For example, if I say that he is my principal, I am his agent. Di ba, as an agent, I act for in behalf of my principal. Now, if let's say I enter into a transaction, it is as if, and I represent myself as his agent, it is as if he is the one, the principal is the one dealing with you, correct? Now, res inter alios acta rule. What I say, what I do as an agent binds me alone. That is the rule. It will not bind anybody whom I claim to be my principal. How can it bind somebody? If I claim to be an agent of somebody, I don't simply claim it and then make him likewise liable for any transaction. For what I say, for what I do to bind somebody whom I claim to be my principal, I have to first establish the agency between us. by evidence other than my declaration, other than my statement that he is my principal. If I say, siya, ako inutusan lang niya, agent lang niya ako, it will not necessarily bind him. For my statement, for my act to bind him, whom I claim to be my principal, as I am acting for and in his behalf, I first have to establish the agency between us by evidence other than my declaration that he is my principal. Remember what is what evidence? Independent of my statement. SPA. Diba? GPA. General power of attorney, special power of attorney. That is an evidence independent of my statement that he is my principal. If I say that he is my partner, whatever transaction I enter into, I'm acting for in behalf of the partnership, and he's my partner. Before my statement, before my act could bind him, whom I claim to be, mamaya may lalabas na dyan. Nor in my statement, my act to bind him, whom I claim to be my partner, I first have to establish the partnership between us by evidence, independent evidence of the partnership, other than my statement that we have an existing partnership. What is that? Hindi ba articles of partnership? So ang common denominator dyan, tingnan ninyo, kasi the rule is, what a witness says, what he does, will only bind him. The rights of anybody referred to will not be prejudiced by the act, declaration, or omission of another. However, to bind, exception. Kailangan ma-establish mo yung relation. By evidence other than or independent of the statement or the act. Yun lang, tandaan niyo. Res inter alias acta. Part 1, Part 2. So, common basis for admission. The person making the statement is under the same circumstances as the person against whom it is offered, which give him substantially the same interest and the same motive to make a statement about certain matters. So, kailangan to connect, meron tayong basis to connect by evidence other than the statement of that particular witness. Yung admission by silence, madali lang yan. If you do not react, you hear or you see something which would incriminate you, normally you would have to react. If you do not react under circumstances when it was possible for you to react, that is an admission by silence. But if there is something incriminating that is said or done in your presence and you do not react because it is not possible and proper for you to react, that is not admission by silence. Kailangan lang titignan niyo, was it possible for him? Unless bingi siya, he would have reacted. Unless bulag siya, he would have reacted. Because it is incriminatory of him. Now, if it does not, and it does not appear that it appears that it was possible for him to react, then that is an admission by silence. Kailangan niya may dagdag. Was it possible and proper for him to react? Under the circumstances when he heard it or seen it, the incriminatory matter. Okay, now, yung second part of res inter alias acta is evidence of similar acts. The fact that one did or did not do one thing at one time is not admissible to prove that he did or did not do the same or similar thing at another time. He was accused of theft in one place. He was arrested. He was charged. He was convicted. Okay, the theft of this particular article in this particular place. When he got out of jail, convicted na siya, nag-serve na siya ng sentence niya. When he got out of jail, bumalik siya. The postman always rings twice. Circumstantial. Okay, bumalik siya. Tapos nagkaroon na naman ng ganyan tip. Theft. Gumising kayo. Nagkaroon na naman ng theft in the same place. Siyempre, ang suspetsa, siya na naman. Why? But the fact that he was convicted of the theft on one occasion in that particular place, does not mean that he was the one responsible for the second theft that was committed. Kaya lang, it may be admitted. That is circumstantial. To show what? Propensity, habit, scheme. Why are you always there at the right place at the right time? So, evidence of similar acts. Evidence of similar acts, but not, only, it is not admissible, but it may be admitted only to show habit, scheme, or propensity. Bakit ka laging nandyan pag may naawat? Circumstantial lang yun. So please, two parts. And please remember, remember the case of, People of the Philippines versus Major Emiliano Comiling. In your undergrad, I told you that. People of the Philippines versus Major Emiliano Comiling. It's a 2006 case. Remember, yung witness testified on the witness stand, and she admitted that she was part of the conspiracy in the commission of the crime. She was a co-conspirator in the commission of the crime, and she referred to Major Emiliano Comiling in open court as her co-conspirator in the commission of the crime. Objection, Your Honor, sabi ng lawyer ni Major Comiling. Objection, Your Honor, we invoke the res inter alias acta rule. What she says, what she does, binds her alone. It will not bind my client, whom she referred to as a co-conspirator. Di ba at first glance, tama naman, res inter alias acta. Okay, but what did the Supreme Court say in that particular case? Tandaan ninyo, res inter alias acta refers only to extrajudicial admission. That was made in open court. So it is a judicial admission. It can bind. Gets nyo? Gets nyo? Sabi ni Chismis, sabi ni Dean Ali, itong batch daw na to is konti lang lagi umaattend. The batch daw is too proud. Akala daw alam na lahat. Kasi marami di ba dapat graduates? Parang not interested. That was what he told me last night. Okay? Sabi na yung batch na yan. Sige, huwag natin bibitawan. Ano natin yan eh. Tomasians yan. Hindi, pero give up ako dyan sa batch na yan. Sabi, chismis. Sinabi niya kagabi. Sabi, they don't want to learn. They do not appreciate. Sinasabi ko na sa inyo. Okay. Sabi ko, oo nga sir eh, kasi nung criminal, nabastos pa ako eh. Okay, offer of compromise is very important. Now, sabi natin, not natin, yung rules. An offer of compromise in a civil case, offer of compromise is not admissible against the one who made the offer. As we said kanina, in fact, in civil cases, compromise is encouraged. But in criminal cases, you cannot go on record as settling or compromising a criminal case. Because elementary naman yan in criminal law. You cannot compromise a criminal case. Therefore, if in a criminal case, under the rules, if in a criminal case, the accused makes an offer of compromise, that is already considered as an implied admission of guilt. Okay. Now, let me just call your attention to two cases that apply. As in civil cases, the case of Luciano Tan versus Rodil Enterprises. It's a 2006 case. I think I mentioned this when you were in the undergrad. Luciano Tan versus Rodil Enterprises, 2006. Kinwalified dyan. The rule is, in civil cases, an offer of compromise, we said, is not admissible. Pero kinwalified. If in a civil case, the debtor or the defendant does not admit the existence of the debt, if he does not admit the existence of the debt, and he makes an offer of compromise only to put an end to a litigation or to buy peace, that offer of compromise will not be admissible against him. Now, if in that particular civil case, the defendant debtor acknowledges the existence of the debt, his offer of compromise will be admissible against him. Will be admissible as his liability. Ulit civil case. If in that civil case, kasi di ba the rule is, under the rules, it will not be admissible against the one who made the offer if it is a civil case. Now, in that case of Luciano Tan versus Rodil Enterprises 2006, kinwalify ng Supreme Court. Sabi ng Supreme Court, if the defendant debtor does not acknowledge the existence of the debt, but merely makes an offer of compromise, either because he wants to put an end to the litigation or he wants to buy peace for any other reason except acknowledging the existence of the debt, hindi niya ni-acknowledge, then that offer of compromise should not be used in evidence against him. Is not admissible against him. However, if in the civil case, the defendant debtor makes an offer of compromise and he makes an offer because he acknowledges the existence of the debt. If he acknowledges the existence of the debt and he makes an offer, definitely that is admissible against him. Now, in a criminal case, the rule is, if the accused makes an offer of compromise in a criminal case, the accused makes an offer of compromise in a criminal case, that is considered as an implied admission of guilt. Nandun naman yan sa rules, di ba? It is an admission. Now, in the case of People versus Cesar Galvez, I mentioned this one. It's a 2007 case. People versus Cesar Galvez. Ano ang sinabi ng Supreme Court? Because what happened there, the parties, the accused and the private offended party, it was scheduled for pre-trial conference on that particular day, but the accused and the private offended party moved or made a motion to please defer pre-trial conference because the parties are talking, negotiating for the amicable settlement of the case. Okay, so nakalagay dun sa order, deferred because pre-trial conference. Okay, on that basis, the trial court who agreed to the deferment on joint motion of the accused and the private defendant party, agrees to the deferment on the ground that they are negotiating for the amicable settlement of the case based on that order. Based on that order, sabi, he made an offer of compromise and therefore he was found guilty. Convicted siya. Based on that manifestation and based on, siyempre yung order rewarded na yan eh. But there was actually no offer. Wala, nothing in the record. Sabi lang, it was not shown who made the offer. Ang sinabi lang, they moved for deferment of the pre-trial conference, of deferment of proceedings because they are negotiating. Because there were ongoing negotiations for the amicable settlement of the case. And the judge took it to mean as an offer of compromise having been made by the accused. So he was convicted based on that. What did the Supreme Court say? Pumalik yan, inaffirm conviction until it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, pakibasa niyo to kasi nalalabuan din ako. Ang sabi ng Supreme Court, if he makes, in a criminal case, if the accused makes an offer of compromise, in a criminal case, but he makes an offer of compromise without acknowledging his guilt, he makes an offer of compromise in the criminal case without acknowledging his guilt, but simply to avoid the inconvenience of imprisonment, or for other reasons. Doon ako I found funny. Just to avoid the inconvenience of imprisonment or other consequences of a criminal prosecution, but he does not acknowledge his guilt, that offer of compromise should not be admissible against him as evidence of guilt. Gets niya? Kasi nakalagay sa rule, basta nag-offer ka sa criminal case, implied admission, inqualify in that case. If he makes an offer, but for a different purpose, not actually an acknowledgement of guilt, hindi pwede mag-isabi mo implied admission. Hindi na. Walang acknowledgement. Kung may acknowledgement, it is definitely going to be used in evidence. Ang pinag-usapan lang dyan is he makes an offer of compromise. Hindi kaagad siya guilty. The court would have to find out what is his reason for making that offer of compromise in the criminal case. If it is for a different purpose other than to acknowledge his guilt, then that should not be admissible against him. People versus Cesar Galvez, 2007. Okay. We go to different kinds of evidence. Yung object, documentary, and testimonial. Okay, now, very important. Object. Anything, basic, no? Anything that is addressed to the senses of the court is object evidence. Next, object evidence is the most potent piece, the strongest, the most potent piece of evidence. Why? Because you can actually see it, feel it, hear it, taste it, touch it. Because it is addressed to the senses of the court. That is object evidence. However, the use or the admissibility of object evidence is, of course, subject to the following conditions. I mean, even if it is the strongest piece of evidence, because it is the most potent piece of evidence, because you can actually see it, addressed to the sense of the court. You can actually see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, taste it. Direkto talaga yan eh. So very potent. It is concrete. Even if it is, nevertheless, for it to be admissible, it must be, number one, it must be relevant. Admissibility, di ba? It must be relevant. It must be competent. It must have been authenticated. Remember, kasi ito, object ito eh. Evidence. So addressed to the senses of the court. Relevant, competent. It must be authenticated by competent testimonial evidence. Authenticated by competent testimonial evidence. And number four, it must be shown that the integrity of that object evidence was preserved. Yan yung ginagamit ngayon, yung very common chain of custody. Particularly in drugs cases. Chain of custody. Remember in drugs cases, yung bypass, what is the very corpus delicti of the violation of 9165 is the drugs itself. That is the very corpus delicti. In a lot of cases, a line of cases of the Supreme Court, so sinasabi, in prosecution for drugs cases, the very corpus delicti is the drugs itself that was actually confiscated. Now, that is object evidence. But is it necessarily admissible? Not necessarily for purposes of criminal prosecution under 9165, because it has first to be authenticated by the person who actually confiscated it and who must prove that the integrity of that particular object evidence was preserved. From when? From the time it was confiscated from the accused up to the time it is actually presented in evidence in court. The integrity. Diyan papasok yung chain of custody ninyo. From the time it is, that is why, di ba, in section 21 of 9165, kailangan, the requirement is, in bypass, yung purchase of the drugs, the marking must be made right there. At the place of the confiscation, kasi paano marka na, ito na, this is the very drugs. Because along the way, it can be changed. Remember the case of 6425 pa yan nun eh, yung May Solas and si Ace Varel, di ba, pagdating sa pagdating sa husgado, tawas na lang. Remember? You don't. Nun lang yun eh. Drugs yung nakuha nun. But pagdating sa husgado, tawas na. Hindi na. So, integrity, na-dismiss ang case. So, because integrity of the very drugs was not shown to have been preserved. So, kailangan yan. Chain of custody must be. So, for purposes of admissibility of object evidence, it must be relevant, it must be competent, meaning not excluded by the rules, it must have been authenticated by competent testimonial evidence, and the integrity must have been preserved. So there is need to establish the chain of custody. Next, kasama na rin dyan with respect to identification. Identification, let's say, identification of the accused. Please remember, identification is part of object evidence addressed to the sense of sight. In court, identification, meaning the identification of a witness, the identification of the accused by a witness, which is made in open court. Kasi usually, what happens in court? You know the accused? Yes. If you see him again, will you be able to identify him? Yes. If you look around the courtroom and tell us that the accused is here, he's here. Where is he? Kunyari lang. Okay, so that is in-court identification because it was made in the course of the proceedings. Now, the rule is, in-court identification is largely dependent on out-of-court identification. Kasi, years after or months after bago papasok sa court yun eh. So you will be tested on cross-examination. How are you able to make the out-of-court identification? For you to be found credible as a witness when you're making now the identification of the same accused, whom you say you have actually identified at the time of the commission of the crime. That is why in-court identification is largely the admissibility of in-court identification is largely dependent on out-of-court identification. Now, please, dito sa out-of-court identification, ina-apply daw ang totality of circumstances test. Importante yan. Totality of circumstances test to show the credibility. Number one, opportunity of the witness to view the suspect at the time of the commission of the crime. Opportunity of the witness to view the suspect at the time of the commission of the crime. Number two, the degree of attention of the witness. The degree of attention of the witness on the accused at the time of the commission. Meaning, nothing distracted him from actually witnessing the incident and identifying the persons taking part in the incident. The degree of attention. Next, accuracy. Accuracy of any prior identification of the suspect by the witness. Accuracy of any prior identification. Next, the level of certainty. The level of certainty of the witness in his identification of the accused. Level of certainty. How sure are you? Anong distance mo sa kanya? Kasi there was one case, robbery with homicide. At that time, nagra-rob inside the jeep. Nandito sa kanya eh. Identified niya talaga. It's a 2008 case. I forgot. People versus Jojo Musa yata et al. Robbery with homicide. At the time of the robbery inside the passenger jeep, the witness was there. Nothing distracted her. In-apply dyan yung totality of circumstances test. Identification. So, the level of certainty. How are you sure? Nakaharap po, nakaupo ako yun, no? Niro-rob niya. Hindi rob, R-U-B-R-O-B. Nakaharap. Okay, so, degree of, level of certainty. Next, the length of time from the identification, the length of time from the commission of the crime to the identification of the witness. From the commission of the crime to the identification. And number and the last is suggestiveness of the procedure. Ito, kasi ang police, they're always accused of suggesting. Di ba? Suggestiveness of the procedure in the identification. Because in one case, sabi ng accused, no, the witnesses were called, and the witnesses were called, and they already, when they went to the police station, they already had a mindset na kami ang ituro. Okay, sabi ng police, it's part of, no. When we called them, because we believe that we have already arrested the suspects, the witness, upon arrival at the police station, went directly to the celda. And then, from a great number, alam nyo naman sa jail, no, para silang sardines. But not in Makati. Ang ganda talaga ng jail dyan. Nag-prison ministry ako dyan when I was in Makati. Malinis. Asan ako? Ayun. When the witness arrived, congested yung jail, from among the suspects, tinuro niya talaga yung accused. So sabi niya, there was no suggestion. In fact, how are the suspects, according to Supreme Court, how are the suspects presented to the witness? And supposed to be presented to the witness or for identification by the witness. Hindi ba yung mga police line-up? That is not suggestive kasi marami. Police line-up, yung mga mugshots, yung personal confrontation. So, kailangan lang matanggal yung suggestiveness of the procedure adopted in the identification. Ang word ko dyan, to make me remember, ODALS. O-D-A-L-L-S. ODALS. Tandaan nyo, totality of circumstances test. ODALS. O, opportunity of the witness to view the suspect. D, degree of attention. A, accuracy of any prior identification of the suspect by the witness. L, level of certainty in the identification. Another L, double L, ODALS. L, length of time, from the time of the commission of the crime to the time of the identification. And S, suggestiveness of the procedure. Alam niyo, para madali sa inyo, you have to coin your word. I was doing that when I was a student, not so long ago. I'm still doing it now that I'm a judge. Para madali. Even, in courtroom proceedings, alisto ako kasi meron na ako dito So when the lawyer starts to make yabang-yabang, nababara ko. Kasi meron ako mga words dito sa utak ko. That's the way to study gumawa kayo ng sarili niyong word, lalo na pag may kailangan memorization. Gumawa kayo ng word. Gumawa pala kayo. What about the admissibility of yung mga photographs, yung mga x-rays, yung mga scientific experiments, ephemeral electronic communications? Sabi dito, the admissibility would largely depend on laying the proper foundation. Laying the proper foundation. The rule, therefore, boils down to the basic question: does the evidence sufficiently, demonstrative evidence ito di ba? Does the evidence sufficiently and accurately represent the object it seeks to demonstrate? Does it sufficiently and accurately represent the object that it represents? Okay, documentary evidence. What should you remember as far as documentary evidence is concerned? Please, documents. Documentary evidence. With respect to documentary evidence, you apply two rules, di ba? The best evidence rule, the parole evidence rule. Okay. Documentary evidence, you apply the best evidence rule, the parole evidence rule. Pag sinabi mong documentary evidence, it is not limited to written instruments. Because documentary evidence may refer any format. Diba? Wait. Let me just quote yung Okay. Documents as evidence consist of writings or any material containing letters, words, numbers, figures, symbols, or other modes of written expressions offered as proof of their content. So, a documentary evidence is not limited to a written instrument. Any form, any material. So remember, if it is a wall which is made of hollow blocks, can be considered as a document, as documentary evidence, depending on the purpose for which it is offered. Documentary evidence or document is not necessarily limited to written instrument. It may consist of different materials. That's why we said a wall which is made of wood or which is made of hollow blocks can still be considered as documentary evidence, depending on the purpose for which, any form of written expression is. So, for which, depending on the purpose for which that particular wall is offered. For example, the wall, there are writings on the wall. If you offer that wall, hindi mo na bibit-bitin. I-offer mo lang. You make reference to that. If you offer that wall to prove that there are writings on it, that is object evidence. Because you're actually proving the existence of writings on the wall. So if you offer that wall to prove that there are writings on the wall, that wall is offered as object evidence. On the other hand, if you offer that wall made of hollow blocks to prove what is actually written on it, that is documentary evidence. To prove what is actually written on it, that is documented. So you refer to the contents already. But if you're simply offering this particular wall or even an instrument to prove its existence, that is treated as object evidence. But if you're already offering it to prove its contents, that is documentary evidence, no matter the material making up that particular evidence. Gets niya? Any form of written expression offered as proof of its contents. So if you're simply offering to prove the existence, object yan. But if you're offering to prove the contents, documentary yan. So it is dependent, whether it is object or documentary, it all depends on the purpose for which the evidence is offered. Gets niya? Okay, now, as far as documentary evidence is concerned, please take note of the two basic rules. Best evidence rule, parole evidence rule. Tandaan niyo lang, pag best evidence, number one, what is the best evidence? It is the original. Best evidence, original is always the best evidence. Okay, when do you apply the best evidence rule? When the subject of the inquiry, the subject of the question pertains to the contents of the document. When the subject of the question, when the question itself pertains to the contents of the document, you apply the best evidence rule. And how do you apply the best evidence rule? You have to produce the original. When the subject of the inquiry or the question pertains to the contents of a document, you apply the best evidence rule. And when you apply the best evidence rule, you have to present the original. For example, kahit na in the course of the testimony of a witness, in the course of the examination of a witness, if a question is propounded to the witness, and the question pertains to the contents of the document, objekan yan. Why? If, Your Honor, I object, that is in violation of the best evidence rule. The question pertains to the contents of the document, but the witness, Your Honor, is being presented simply with a photocopy, a machine copy of the document, that is not the best evidence. But the question pertains to the contents of the document. Kailangan you have to confront the witness with the original of the document. Kasi malay mo, hindi naman yun ang talagang what is contained in the original. So you have to, for purposes of validation, you have to present the original. Best evidence rule. Now, an exception is, meaning, pag sa exception, you may introduce secondary evidence. Sa exception. Even if the question pertains to the contents of the document, you may, under certain circumstances, present or introduce secondary evidence. But secondary evidence, yan ang mga photocopy, mga Xerox copy, machine copy, yan secondary evidence. Okay, now, under what circumstances? Very common. When the original has been lost, destroyed, or otherwise cannot be produced in court without bad faith on the part of the author. Lost, destroyed, or otherwise cannot be produced in court without bad faith on the part of the author. Okay, for purposes, sabi ng rules, if you're able to establish this, you may be allowed to introduce secondary evidence. But kailangan, you have to establish the fact that the original was actually existing. Kailangan talaga ma-establish mo, by testimonial evidence, that the original actually existed. And number two, the original existed, but it has been lost. You have to establish the cause or the reason for the unavailability of the original. Kasi your question pertains to the contents of the document. And under the best evidence rule, if the question pertains to the contents of the document, original ipipresenta mo. But you say that the original has been lost, has been destroyed, or otherwise cannot be produced in court without bad faith on your part. Therefore, pwede kang magpresenta ng secondary evidence, ng photocopy, but you first have to establish the fact that the original actually existed. And number two, you have to establish the reason or the cause for the unavailability of the original. Gets nyo? Okay, now, sabi pa, yung isang exception. If the original is in the custody, in the custody or possession of the adverse party who has been given reasonable notice to produce it, but he does not produce it, then you may be allowed to present secondary evidence. For example, you request the court, I intend to present this particular document, Your Honor, but the adverse party is in possession of that original. We request for an order from the court to direct the adverse party to please present the original in court because I need to inspect, I need to present it and offer it as my own evidence. Okay, so the court gives him notice to produce the original. What if the adverse party acknowledges the fact that he is in possession or custody of the original, but he does not want to produce the original because it will incriminate him. It might incriminate him. Question, under those circumstances, can the author now introduce in evidence secondary evidence? Yes, kasi naka-comply na sa rule. The original is in the custody of the adverse party and the adverse party was given notice to produce it. Whatever may be his reason why he refuses to produce it, the point is, in-acknowledge niya na nasa kanya. Second point, he was given notice to produce it, he does not produce it, then you may now present secondary evidence. Exception. Okay, if the original, under the rules, consists of voluminous documents, if the original consists of voluminous documents, which cannot all be presented in court, masyadong marami, all the originals cannot be presented in court, too voluminous, masyadong marami, you cannot present it in court, pwedeng secondary evidence by way of a what? A summary of all the facts stated in the original. If the original consists of voluminous documents that cannot all be brought to court. As an exception, you may, secondary evidence yan, let's say it is a summary of the person in custody of those documents, a summary of what is the fact that can be lifted from those voluminous documents. That is secondary evidence. So, if tandaan nyo, basta best evidence rule, you apply only if the subject of the inquiry pertains to the contents of the document. And when you apply the best evidence rule, you have to produce the original. Okay. On the other hand, parole evidence rule. Pag parole evidence rule, parole, tandaan nyo, is outside evidence. Parole is external evidence. Outside of what? Outside of a written instrument. Yun ang concept mo na, parole is outside evidence. External evidence. Outside of a written instrument. Why? What is the parole evidence rule? Parties come to an agreement. They decide to put down the terms of their agreement into writing. Parties come to an agreement. They put down the terms of their agreement into writing. So, nandito na sa written instrument. Now, that writing alone, that written instrument is considered to be the only evidence of the terms agreed upon. For you to apply the parole evidence rule, in step by step to parties come to the agreement, they put the terms of their agreement into writing. They took it down in an instrument. Now, that written instrument is the only evidence of the terms agreed upon. And therefore, if that is the rule, that is the written instrument, is the only evidence of the terms agreed upon, it will now bar outside evidence. It will now bar parole evidence outside of that written instrument. Parole evidence. Exceptions. Pag sinabi mo exceptions to the parole evidence, it simply means that under the exceptions, you may introduce evidence outside of the written instrument. Exception. You may introduce evidence outside of the written instrument. What is the purpose? For you to be allowed to introduce evidence outside of the written instrument. It is to modify, to explain what is contained in the terms. Sasabihin mo kasi, yung written instrument, I agree. I admit that I have entered into an agreement. We took it down, but the agreement does not reflect all the terms agreed upon. So, i-modify ko. You now may be allowed to introduce an evidence to explain, modify what is actually considered, what is actually contained in that written instrument. Gets nyo? One very important exception to the parole evidence rule is when you are, an exception is when you are allowed to introduce evidence outside that written instrument is intrinsic validity. Tandaan nyo yan, very important exception yan. Intrinsic ambiguity. Intrinsic ambiguity. Intrinsic ambiguity, meaning that the document is clear on its face. Intrinsic ambiguity, the document is clear on its face. Ambiguity arises from other sources other than the instrument. Ambiguity, the document, intrinsic ambiguity is an exception to the parole evidence rule. The document is clear on its face. Ambiguity arises from other sources other than the instrument. Remember, the example ko, deed of donation. Deed of donation. Donation, the object is, let's say, a BMW 2010 model. It is donated, cost of the donation out of pure liberality on the part of the donor. And the donee is one, let's say, Jose Fernandez. So, meron ka ng donee, meron ka ng object, meron kang cause. So, the instrument is clear on its face. Now, ang donee niyan is Jose Fernandez. Donation. For purposes of validity in your civil law, for purposes of validity of a deed of donation, it has to be accepted by the donee. Correct? Okay. So, it is dumating dalawang mama, pareho ang pangalan, Jose Fernandez. Jose Fernandez Sr., Jose Fernandez Jr. They are both Jose Fernandez. The deed of donation, the donee is one Jose Fernandez. So, merong intrinsic ambiguity. Di ba? The document is clear on its face. Nagkaroon ng ambiguity from other sources because there are two persons who claim to be, who are Jose Fernandez's, but who claim to be the donee. So they have to prove, they have to present evidence outside of the deed of donation to prove that the donee referred to in that deed of donation is Jose Fernandez Jr. Or the donee referred to in that particular deed of donation is Jose Fernandez Sr. That is intrinsic ambiguity as an exception to the parole evidence rule, and therefore it allows the introduction of evidence outside of that written instrument. Gets niya? Okay. Okay, take a break,
Matulog ka.